Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And we're live. And today's guest is Trouble. From the beginning, we're going to be flipping things around on you. If you're tuning into this, I hope you drank your coffee already, because we're going to flip around your approach to content, your approach to marketing. My guest is a best-selling author. He's a keynote speaker. He has his own podcast. He's the founder and chief troublemaker at the Content Advisory, part of the Content Marketing Institute. Robert Rose, how are you, sir?
I'm doing really well. I'm not sure. That is some good energy right there. I'm not sure I can match quite that, but I'm ready to roll for sure.
Well, here, I'll pass you one of these energy drinks here.
Thank you very much. I could use that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if you get too much energy, I'll pass you a shot to kind of take it back down.
Well, that's more like it. Yeah. Give me a tequila any day of the week.
That would be a different kind of podcast. That'd be a fun podcast.
Well, I've done a couple of those drunk shows, and trust me, they sound a lot better than they actually, I mean, they don't end up sounding really great, but the concept of it sounds a lot better than it actually is.
Right. It's kind of like the idea of drinking and how it inversely affects your ability to karaoke. It's just...
Well, I suppose that's all perspective, isn't it?
It gives you the courage, and then slowly but surely it takes away your ability, if you even had it in the first place. So
right.
So hey, the theme, it's all around content, freaking content.
Yeah.
And this is part of our marketing leadership series, getting thought leaders in the space, talking about what they're seeing now, smashing BS, and then also talking about where we're going in the future. And so here, I'm going to pass you this thing.
Okay.
And it's heavy, so go ahead and take that. That's
okay. Thank you. Yeah,
Thor's
it is heavy.
Hammer. And go ahead and pick up Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing, some bogus strategy or some misconceptions you've been hearing. You just want to set the record straight.
Sure. Well, the one that comes leaping to mind would be that content is cheaper, it is easier, and it is more efficient than basically creating ads or those types of things. And it's not. Content is more expensive, it takes longer, and it is harder than creating ads or catalogs or those kinds of things. And sadly, there are a lot of people out there that really are still evangelizing this idea that content marketing is cheaper or content marketing is more efficient than creating ads. And it's just not true. It's just it's just absolutely not true. Now, having said all of that,
you're a content guy.
Of course.
Are you smashing yourself here?
No.
I've heard the vendors out there say that it's the bee's knees. You got to do nothing but content and you'll be fine. So, but you're stirring up trouble here right at the beginning.
Yeah, and because here's the thing, I want people to be good at it, right?
Right.
And the thing is, the good news is that done well, content can also provide for exponential more value than ads or catalogs or those kinds of things. And what I mean by that is that, so for example, go to your agency and ask them for an ad, and they'll say, great. And they'll deliver you 3 versions of that ad. I don't know why it's always been 3, but you're going to get 3 versions of that ad. And one of them is going to be kind of what the creative brief said. And one of them is really not going to be. And one of them's so out there that you're just like, what the hell is this?
Right.
And so and then what you're going to do is you're going to do the thing that every agency hates, which is you're going to go, well, can I have a little bit of number 1 and a little bit of number 2? And the agency's going to talk bad behind your back. Just know that. But they're going to do it. And they're going to come back and deliver you that 4th version. You're going to go, great, and you're going to get a bill.
Right.
Now go ask that same agency for a piece of content. And after they get up off the floor and go, what? I don't even know what you mean by that. Then they're going to ask, well, how good do you want it to be? Because if you want it really good and you want like all thought leadery and all that kind of stuff, well, it's going to be really expensive. We have to go hire a subject matter expert. We actually have to go do research. We actually have to make it great. But if you just want like the top 5 reasons you need aluminum siding on your house, well, then we can do that for 5 cents a word. And we've got an author freelancer who can do that.
Yeah.
That's the key. is that creating value with content is harder. It's just simply harder than writing an ad or writing a brochure or writing a catalog or writing a web page. It's just
Yep.
harder. And delivering that value with content is truly takes longer and is less efficient. But if we do it well, it provides the level of evergreen value that builds an engagement audience over time. And that value just keeps on building with itself. It just keeps on going. And that's the real difference. That's the real difference that we need to get over here is that if we're going to invest in content as part of the portfolio of our marketing strategy, we need to get good at it and
Mhm.
not treat it like the same as we do catalog writing, ad writing, and web page and landing page writing.
Right, because those things, you can kind of just come up with something on the top of your head, and then here's my pitch. Maybe some research before it, but good content. You're right. Like the factory approach to content. Ooh, it's a dangerous place to go down. Because people can smell bad content. I mean, I recently filled out. I saw a little ad, and sometimes it's like meta, right? You see marketing, and if you're a marketer, you kind of go down that path, and so I clicked. I'm like, oh, it's AI plus marketing automation. That sounds great. I fill out the stupid form, and the content I got was terrible. It was terrible, and it
I'm
was.
shocked.
It was. I know you're shocked, and it was the worst thing. It was so bad that I mean, I was actually angry, and so of course, a day later, some poor BDR rep had to call me and was like,
Right?
"Hey, did you see our content?" I was like, "You guys, it's like get off my lawn, like get out of here, never call me again, unsubscribe, mark as spam." Just the worst. So that's the cost of doing it wrong. How how do we approach it to go down the right path? Is that the right question to ask even?
It is. And the thing is what is so hard these days is, and I've said this a million times before, which is in most businesses, and I don't care if you're a small business or, a Fortune 10 business, the approach to content typically is the same, which is content is kind of everybody's job and nobody's strategy.
Uh,
And everybody is expected, I mean, it's even in the resumes and the job descriptions that we, must write well, right? Must communicate well. And we expect everybody to be able to create content, but of course not everybody can at,
right.
at the same level, which is fine, perfectly fine. However, the challenge is not that we're hiring people who don't know how to write or don't know how to create content. What we're not doing as a business is creating the strategy and the function of content as something strategic to us. And if we don't look at content, which is communication, content is our communication to the world.
Yep.
If we don't look at it at the same kind of strategic level that we do accounting or legal or sales or marketing, we will fail at it because we quite frankly won't put the care and the feeding into the quality. We typically look at it, you said it well, as a machine, as a factory. Even some people call their content factory, which is just wrong. They're not widgets.
They're
These are the
not.
kinds of things that are going to differentiate us in the market. And so the starting place for any business is to take a step back and to say, how can we start looking at our creation, ideation, production, and management of content as something truly strategic to our business and put the requisite investment into it?
Take a step back and ask how we make this work. What's the strategy behind this? Love that.
Yeah, it's basically you look at who's creating content and for what purpose, right? One of the one of the things that I say to, classes that I'm teaching or consulting clients that I've got in front of me is I'll say, look, all of you are creating content, right? So I'll be typically looking at the marketing team, the PR team, the sales team, the executive team in some cases. All of them will sit in a room, sometimes that's 10 people, sometimes it's 50 people.
Yep.
And I'll say, okay, tomorrow, and I'm serious with this. I'll say tomorrow, full stop. Full stop. We stop. No more blog posts, no more emails, no more catalog writing, no more e-commerce copy, no more Twitter, no more Facebook. It's
Okay.
full stop on content production. Who would miss it? And if the only answer is ourselves or my mom or my daughter who looks at my Twitter feed and sort of giggles, then we have a problem Because if we don't have anybody calling us up and saying, hey, I miss your blog, I miss your
Mm-hmm.
email newsletter, to your point, right? That content you got from that company was bad. It
Yeah.
would have been better for them to not send you anything at all than it
Yeah.
was to actually send you the bad thing.
True.
And so we have to take a full stop approach to saying, what is it we're creating? Why are we creating it? And is it truly as good as our products and services? Because if our content isn't as good as our products and services, then we have a problem and we've got to fix it, because our content arguably has to be better than our products and services, because it will ultimately be the thing that tips the scales in our favor for our customers to actually become customers. So that's the full stop, sort of take a step back and look at what we're doing with content and say, is it as good as what we produce? Because if it isn't, we should stop doing it.
Yeah. I mean, everyone was warned about the troublemaker approach to content, and I love it. It's like, stop doing it. And I even pause now for my own content and thinking, there is stuff that, yeah, and then there is stuff that I don't know. And so, is that just a judgment call on yourself, or is it kind of a
Yeah,
rhetorical
well, I
question
mean,
to ask
look,
yourself?
I am being hyperbolic to sort of make the point and
Sure.
make for a good show, but
Hey.
here's the reality of it. Of course, we have to produce. There's some blocking and tackling stuff that we have to produce.
Okay.
We have to write the About Us page on the website. We have to send out an email doing X, Y, or Z thing. And so I get that there's some basic blocking and tackling that doesn't have to be Shakespeare every time we publish it out. But if we're trying to send out something, like, just to the point, if we're trying to send out something that's going to differentiate us as a thought leader, well, we have to lead some thought. And so if we're going to send out something that says, here's the newest thought leadership on marketing and AI, it better be good. It better be better than what we're getting elsewhere. Now, does it have to be amazingly astounding, et cetera, et cetera? That is a judgment call. But ultimately, it has to be better than the last one I got. Otherwise, why am I sending you another one? Right? That's here. I was working with an insurance company not long ago, and the complaint that the head of content strategy there had, which was basically all the marketing managers would create content for insurance, their blog, their ebooks, their
Oh, wow.
landing pages, et cetera. Product marketing managers would do it. The content people would do it. And she opened up her content management system and she did a sort, and she said, look, if I see one more article on distracted driving, texting while driving, I'm going to kill someone, because look, and she pointed at the screen, there were 43 blog posts about distracted driving. Which one of the 42 of those didn't they need? And so
Right.
that's the problem, is that it's, in some cases, it's just easier to scratch off another, check a box and write another blog post on distracted driving than it is to go, how do we make this one post that we've created, or this one white paper that we've created, the most amazing thing and most resourceful, differentiated piece on distracted driving anywhere?
Right.
That's the difference. That's taking a step back, because 42 others of them were, quite frankly, wasted money.
Agreed. Wasted money from all the people's time put into it if they paid someone to write it. Now, how do you balance that out with, the idea that people's attention is slight? If you put it on Twitter, you got to put it on there 1,000 times for someone to actually see it. 70% of content doesn't get consumed, or whatever the number might be, right? So if they're not even going to see it, why do I put the value into it? Is that where people are going? Is that why this is happening, or are we just lazy?
It's a little bit of all of the above,
Okay.
right? I mean, there is a certain amount of, this goes back to the content is kind of everybody's job, but nobody's strategy. And, and,
Hmm.
and this isn't any one person's fault, right? Because some of the content that's getting created in an ad hoc, sort of random act of content kind of way, some of it's quite good.
Yeah.
you know, 3 or maybe more of those blog posts on distracted driving were pretty good, but quite frankly, they didn't need more. They just needed to, communicate. And it's because we don't have a strategy at its core.
Right.
And
No
so
strategy.
we
Yep.
don't have a process, right? We don't have a method for creating and ideating content. Thus, everything, it's the world where I'm a hammer and everything looks like a nail kind of thing. So I'm just going to create something net new. But that goes to your point about attention, which thankfully, the whole goldfish thing is dying. I mean, people, we do have a longer attention span than goldfish.
Yeah,
But
what's the? I mean, it's kind of like a myth. You probably need to smash. Is what's the details on the
you see it at a lot of conferences, right? Where people will show a picture of a goldfish and they'll point to a study that was done actually about 10 years ago now, not quite 10 years ago. I think it was 2011 or something like that. And it was a study actually done by Microsoft, where they actually were quoting a medical study, a biology study basically,
Mhm.
of not the attention span. They were talking about the memory of a goldfish. They were talking about the memory length of a goldfish. And somehow what they did was they conflated this idea of the length of memory of a goldfish with the attention span of a goldfish. And it became this 8-second thing. But even that was morphed because what they were actually saying, what Microsoft was actually saying in this original study was not that the attention span or the memory length was bad. They were trying to draw a cute metaphor. And they said, listen, goldfish have an attention span of 8 seconds. People are spending 7 seconds on the front page of your website. Thus, you have a less of an attention span. No, that's not the conclusion. The conclusion should be your website content is so bad, people are going away from it in less than
Right,
7 seconds.
right,
And if
right.
they have quite a lengthy attention span, they're just not using it because your content isn't very good. That was their original point, which is actually a good point. And so when we see the goldfish slide these days, it's often, talking about how digital and the world of the web has basically reduced our attention spans down to such a small level, but that's not true. Anybody who's binge watched Game of Thrones know that you have a longer attention span than a goldfish.
Hell yeah, I've definitely
Yeah,
done that. I think I did
exactly.
Stranger Things in one night. The
But
first.
the point is what it has done, it has reduced our ceiling of attention that we're willing to spend on any one piece of content because we understand as humans now that something more valuable is a click or a Google search away. So we have no patience. We have no patience for bad content anymore. We can go get something better elsewhere. Again, not to sort of belabor the experience you had, but the second you got that AI and marketing automation white paper, you said to yourself, I don't have to get through the first 10 words of this to know that I don't like it, and I'm going to go to Google and search again.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. That's
Yeah.
the difference. We have to not only gather attention these days, but actually hold it. And that's the
Mhm.
that's the most important part.
Gather the attention and hold it. So you just roll your eyes every time you see a goldfish come up
Well,
on the
I roll my eyes every time I see some marketing guru up on stage talking about the goldfish thing, which thankfully there's been enough written on the myth of it that
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
seeing it less and less these days. But I still run across it occasionally.
It's funny. It's like playing telephone, and then it ends up on a slide deck.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same, by the way, you had mentioned the whole, 2/3 or 70%, depending on whose research number you believe,
Sure.
of content never goes seen produced by a business. It's the same thing, right? It's just that's the 43 distracted driving blog post, right? 2/3 of those will never be seen because quite frankly, they're not relevant in this
Ah,
the value. And so we just, instead of creating something or improving upon something that already exists, we just create something net new that, quite frankly, never rises above the surface of attention. Therefore, it never gets seen by our sales guys because they just reach for what's easy for them, right? And so
right. You know,
they
I
just
guess
say
I
yes.
guess I was falling into that myth as well. Then thinking 70% of content goes unused. I was maybe justifying that it was all good content, but you're right. It's not. Most of it's not good content. So if there, to your point, one blog article would have been fine. 42 others on the same topic. Of course, no one's reading it.
Of course,
So
it doesn't matter,
yeah.
right? We produce too much stuff. When we say 2/3 of it isn't seen, it's not because 2/3 of it we're not doing a good enough job of promoting what it is there. We're creating so much that there's no way that they can actually consume it all, and there's no reason for them to consume it all when there's separating the whatever it is, the wheat from the chaff or the cream from the milk or whatever. That's the you know we're as consumers as well as purveyors of content, and
Mhm.
mostly our sales department and PR groups and all of that are our purveyors of content.
Right.
If they don't, if they don't need your stuff, they're not going to use your stuff.
Right. Right. So is activation a problem? It,
Yes.
it not as much of a problem if you don't create a bunch of crazy stuff. I mean, lessen the noise, and then it's a little bit easier to get it all out there and active.
Yeah. I mean, yes, activation is a problem only because it's look, I don't have to tell you this, and I certainly don't have to tell your audience this, that it's a very noisy marketplace out there. And so, you know, paying for attention, independent of what it is you're marketing, right? Whether you're marketing content, your ideas or your product and service, it's just harder these days. It's just,
Right.
there's so much to go through and filter through, and consumers have better and better and better filters that it's harder to pierce it. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to get into that, and money plays a role there. So activating content through paid placement is certainly something where we're seeing a huge trend of content activation take place. But we're also seeing, that drive the need for better quality content as well. A great example of this is what I love what Monster is doing. So monster.com, the big job board, they have what they call their career advice center, which, is their publication and their thought leadership resource center, whatever you want to
Sure.
call it. And it's brilliant. It's well written. The advice that you get there about how to do your resume or how to get a job interview, or, what you should wear, and all those, great thought leadership around how to get a job, which is of course right to their
Yeah.
target
Soft
audience.
skills and all that.
And
Yeah.
so they do original research, and that original research is good. It's differentiated research that gets them coverage on from companies like Fast Company and Inc. and Forbes, people who want to write articles about them. And so their PR group is super happy because they're not saying, hey, here's Monster's new, feature, or here's Monster's new resume search function, press release. They're writing a press release going out and saying, hey, here's original research that our research team has done on how many millennials, are now searching for jobs with high school loans or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's differentiated content, which is helping them drive reach through an earned media, in this case, set of
Right.
circumstances. So yeah, activation is hard. And that's why ultimately it all comes back to what we talked about at the top of the show, which is here we're talking about content as a strategy, right? And that includes, as I like to call it, the marketing of the marketing.
Hmm. I see. I browsed the site as you're describing it, and you're right. There's templates for resumes, and again, it's a lot less selfish content. It's just there to be helpful, and it even looks more like a magazine the way it's designed. It looks like a BuzzFeed or something. It just looks like the kind of content you'd consume as opposed to being, sales collateral.
It's just a good, um, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just a really good experience. And, and I will tell you, they put real money.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, I clicked on one of the articles, and you could see it's like it's not a fluff piece. It's got legit, 4 or 5 things, and they all have questions and answers. And
Yeah.
you're right. That's not an easy investment to make. That's not a cheap or an easy thing to do. You really have to put your weight behind it, and ideally, then hopefully it pays off.
That's right. And so, what is so good about what Monster does, and this is truly, I would say at the heart of every great content marketing strategy, is that they look at their experience, and for them, it's the Career Advice Center, as a product, right? They treat it like it's with the same importance, investment, resources, bandwidth, budget as a product. And so, and they expect that product of content, that product of an experience, is going to provide a return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start talking about it in those terms, you start to understand that we can measure this thing. We can actually show ROI. It's not that we're looking at it through the same lens that we look at it as a catalog or a brochure or an ad, because those, quite frankly, are not products. Those are campaign tactics that we use to describe the value of our products. But if we look at our content product, the experiences that we're creating for consumers through that product lens, we treat it differently. I will tell you, Monster has a marketing budget for Career Advice Center. They,
Right.
they actually spend money to send those press releases,
Right.
to actually advertise it, to attract in viewers. And that alone is a different kind of lens that we look through when we approach this content thing, as opposed to sort of straight direct marketing.
Right. Right. It's not a like a fickle flame kind of going back and forth, like a campaign that just sort of, you tried it, you killed it, you put some serious thought into it, budget into it. You mentioned the ROI and the measurement. What's your approach then to be able to justify the Career Advice Center, or your productized content? How do you then prove that it was worth that investment you just spent in it?
Yeah. So at the most upper level, the highest level, what we want to do is and this gets to the idea. So let's assume for the moment that we can actually, as a business, look at this content experience that we want to create as a product, right?
Yep.
We would never expect any product at all start generating ROI the day after it goes live, right? In other words, if I'm rolling out a new iPhone and I'm Apple, I don't expect that the new iPhone achieves profitability on day 2 of its existence. No, I have sales projections, I have distribution projections, I have cost projections that go out for years in some cases before I sort of cross the line into profitability. That's the difference, right? So when I look at something like the Career Advice Center or my blog or my resource, I'm looking at it as a product and I'm saying, where is my profitability? Now, it's not day 2, right? And which is sadly how often I see businesses looking at that. Like day 2 of the blog's existence, we go, how many leads did it produce? And then we go, none, because you haven't built an audience yet. It hasn't even been indexed by Google yet.
Right.
So, you haven't put any money behind it. So why would it produce any leads yet? And so if we say, great, okay, we're going to give it patience. This goes back to the top of the show when we're talking about that it takes longer, is harder, is, less efficient. And so we say, great, we're going to give it 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, whatever the right time frame is for your particular business. What is its goals? And, where does it sit in the buyer's journey? In other words, does it sit at the top of the funnel and it's supposed to deliver more reach? In other words, a better brand experience? Is it sitting in the middle of the funnel? Is it supposed to deliver more leads? Is it at the end of the funnel or the bottom of the funnel where it's supposed to deliver, less churn or more loyal customers or more valuable customers?
Right.
Wherever it sits, whatever its goals are, what we look at is the delta. We look at the delta between what customers come through that program and are engaged with content, et cetera, and what do they do versus other customers that come through other mechanisms. And that delta is the ROI, is the value. Perfect example is the Monster example that I used earlier, right? Over 18 months, what they've found is that 20% of all of their traffic, all organic traffic, now comes through that platform. And of course, that makes perfect sense, right?
Right.
Because they rank better for search engine optimization, answering questions that people have. That kind of content, of course, is going to do better organically than about us and all that. So 20% of their organic traffic now comes through that. That has generated the most amazing statistic, which I think is just so cool, 65% conversion rate. In other words, 65% of all the organic traffic ends in a job search, which is exactly what they want, right? That's their currency, right? Is how many people do job searches. From the 65% who do job searches, they created over that 18 months, 3 million new members. So 3 million new members came through the resource center, their Career Advice Center. They've estimated that if they were going to spend paid advertising to get those 3 million members, they would have gotten, they would have spent, I can't remember what the number is off the top of my head, but millions of dollars.
Right. You just do the math.
They
If we
just
acquire these guys from Google, from an ad, from Facebook.
Now, they didn't spend $0 to get those 3 million new members.
True.
But they didn't spend millions of dollars to get those 3 members, right?
Right.
And so the delta between what we would have had to have spent to do it in other ways versus what we did spend to do it through content, that gap, that delta is your value in the ROI.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like any other product. Does it help you acquire customers? Does it help you acquire leads? Does it help you create better customers, et cetera? There are strategic a product that creates strategic value for our company.
That makes a lot of sense. Doing the math, the justification, where did you get your traffic from? When you mentioned the organic traffic does a job search, when you even told me about the career center, right? I went there to see what you're talking about. And then before leaving, I just typed in marketing in the search for jobs before leaving, right? I came to the career center, I did a job search. And then later on, if I end up signing up for an account or just sort of register, then that's that flow. And I can just see that happening. You came here, it's right at the top, search for jobs. And it's not even the most prominent thing, but it's there. There's a big purple button next to it. That's a great process, and no one's tricked, right? It wasn't that AI paper. It was hopefully good content that was really helpful for people, and hopefully they get the job from there, and then tell their friends where they got it from.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's really cool, man. Fantastic. I feel like I have a new lease on my content life.
Well, this is the thing. It is not, as I like to say, this is a large, shallow ocean. This is not, there's a lot to learn, but it's not terribly complicated, right? I mean, all we have to, the biggest challenge we have is, quite frankly, just getting, purposeful. And I don't really love that word, but getting sort of, a purpose behind what it is we're doing. So often in content, it just sort of feels like the business goes, yeah, that's easy. Do that. Do some blogs. Do the thing, right? And so our goal then becomes to create ever more widgets just to try and do something. We're busy, so we must be successful, right? And so, and just getting thoughtful about it and purposeful about it, it works. It just works. And it's just putting the care and feeding that we expect to get out of it. It's, it's amazing how that, hard work pays off.
Right. Hard work and also that caring. I think when you care about something, it shows, it comes through, the results are better of the product you've created. And then ideally the outcome is even better as well if you've been deliberate about it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Very cool. I love the transition. Still talking content, but you've got a podcast. Been doing it for a while.
I have two, actually. Yeah.
Oh, you have two now. That's two.
Yeah.
What are they?
So I have two podcasts. One is called The Weekly Wrap, put out by Content Marketing Institute. And it's basically just me, where it's a very short 30-minute show that I do weekly, hence the name. And I sort of wrap up the news of the week. I do one idea that's on my mind, basically hopefully a little bit of a deep thought. And then I interview one person that I think is making truly great meaning in content. And so I typically interview one person. And so it's just a quick 15-minute interview plus the thing with the news and my thought. The second one is one that I've been doing for, oh my gosh, besides the break we took, we've been doing it almost 7 years.
Wow.
And that's called P&R's This Old Marketing. And I do that with my pal, Joe Polizzi. We've been doing that for, like I said, forever. We took last year off because he took a year-long sabbatical, but we're back. I think we're 4 episodes into being back. And that's just he and I being snarky about the news and what's going on in marketing. So it's a fun little sort of wind you up and get everybody excited show.
That's really cool. Is that the one you mentioned? The beer and wine occurred on, or
that's the one? Yes, that's the one. That's the one where Joe and I in the past have gone to events and basically done the show live from. We've done it live from Content Marketing World. We've done it live from a couple of other events, and always a disaster when we do that.
Right, because the snark, there's no end in sight, and it can kind of spiral out of control.
Oh, they just go off the rails so quickly. Yeah, and quite frankly, nobody at the we did it one time we did it one time at a trade show, where we sat in a booth and did it live in a booth, and you got people come up to you going, "Hey, where's the keynote supposed to be?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm not really. We're kind of in a show right now."
Hey, welcome to the show.
Exactly. Yeah. So not terribly productive. No.
So 7 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
2013. We started it in 2013 and produced it consistently every week, for 200 and whatever episodes, and then took a year off.
Wow.
A year and change, really. I mean, it was more
And
like
you
a year and
still
a
like
half.
chatting with each other at this point? You haven't chatted yourselves out of
Well, it's funny. We haven't. You'd think that people would be bored, but I guess we keep it lively enough that
right.
people are still tuning in. It was very heartwarming. Actually, we got a lot of tweets and a lot of emails, from people who both missed it while I was gone and are very thankful that it's back. And it's very humbling, actually, because
Oh.
it's a show that both Joe and I love doing. And it's a lot of fun. So it was fun to be able to bring it back.
Oh, for sure. And that kind of feedback is priceless. But it's also it's something you enjoy doing and you get that feedback. It's doubly times. So how does that fit into marketing, right? You've been doing it for a while now. I kind of get a sense that more and more people are getting into it. There's more apps now in that marketplace, and the floodgates seem to be slowly opening. What's your thought? I mean, you've been doing this a lot longer than even I have. Like, what's your take on how was it, and then where do you see it fitting into marketing now? Especially as it's like content. Where do you see it all kind of placed together?
And now, do you mean certainly audio content and podcasting, or do you just mean content more broadly?
Oh, podcasting for sure.
Podcasting. So,
Yeah, yeah.
look, it is our experience, my experience with podcasting is it's kind of what I call it is it doesn't help you expand your reach. What it does is that it helps you get much more intimate with the audience you do reach. And what I mean by that is that I can point to literally a handful in the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, of audio content that I have created or podcast
Hmm.
content that I have created that has brought me some net new lead or net new piece of business. However, of the audiences we are reaching that I
Right.
meet at a conference or that I meet out on the street or as a
Yep.
client that I'm meeting with, the level of intimacy that we immediately create
Mm.
when I first meet someone who is a listener of the podcast is 10x more personal. They
Yeah.
know me, right? They know
They
me.
do.
They know my
They
favorite
do.
football
Yeah.
teams. They know what I like to drink. They know what I care about. They know my position on the world. They know me, and now I obviously don't know them as well, but as soon as they say they're a listener of the show, we have an immediate connection, and there's just an intimacy of being in someone's ear every week for years, that is truly valuable. And so what I like to say is that it's not going to help me develop more audience, but the audience that I do reach, it definitely helps me establish a more intimate relationship with. That's what I love so much about podcasting.
Yeah. I see exactly what you're saying. And um, it's like your audience has gone through that experience with you, whether as an interview or, me talking to you, or, when I talked to, previous guests who shared some powerful story, it's like, wow, they were there. It's almost like we're all there in that room when that interview went down. And, we've kind of had that shared experience, even though we were just in a different place. I could
Yeah.
totally see how that's the case. Yeah,
Yeah, it's really an amazing thing to me. It's because like anything, right? And to your question also, yeah, it's growing like a weed. Podcasting is
for
certainly,
sure.
everybody and their dog now has a podcast. Just like in the 2008 timeframe, everybody and their dog had a blog.
Right.
And so so it's become the sort of du jour thing to have, but people are falling away as quickly. The sort of consistency and
Right.
level of commitment that it takes to do a
Right.
weekly, daily, or even monthly show is just, it's
Sure.
hard.
Yeah.
This, it's
Yeah.
very hard to keep up the consistency. And so the people who do keep up that consistency get rewarded with people who, are loyal.
Right.
And so that's a good thing. That's a really good thing.
It's a good thing for you. It's a good thing for me. Can you then ... justify that to some CFO or, CEO who's like, oh, we invested in this product called a podcast. Is it that's how they talk, right? That's how CEOs.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Good impression.
Justify this podcast and the expense on the budget.
Yeah.
The variable expense on the budget here.
That's right. Yeah. I always give them the Mr. Byrne voice. Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah. It is the same, I would say, as the justification of investment in social media, which is it's an amplifier.
It's also hard.
Yeah. Right. It's an amplification or a multiplier. And so when I say, is the only thing I want to do, one of the pieces of advice that I get a lot, or that I give a lot, when somebody comes up and says, what advice would you give somebody who's wants to start a podcast? I would say, don't start with one. Start with something else. Start with an email newsletter, or very quickly, at least develop an email newsletter, develop your blog, develop, people who want to subscribe to your ideas. It's just easier. You know what I mean? And quite frankly, you want to tie it to some owned media audience. And podcasting, as as popular as it is not an owned media experience, really. It's a shared media experience, like social media is, because you don't have access to those subscribers. They all subscribe to you via iTunes or the Android store or Google Play or whatever it is, and you don't know who they are. Other than the fact that you have some inkling of an aggregate number of how many there are, you have no idea to reach them, and you're dependent upon iTunes and Google or Android to be able to reach them whenever you put something out. And so you want something where you can transform or translate those audience members into someone you can reach. That's the ROI that guy with the funny voice is looking for.
Got it. Yeah.
And so if you're going to start with a podcast, I'd say don't start with one. Start with an email newsletter, so you start building that audience. Because when we built, Weekly Wrap, when I built P&R's This Old Marketing with Joe, we had an audience. We already, we'd written a couple of books already. We'd
already had an audience.
Email newsletter already. And so we had an audience baked in. So when we came out and said, we have a podcast, well, we immediately had a few hundred listeners right from the get-go, right? That's the key to making a podcast successful. It's a multiplier or an amplifier to your story and your message, and it shouldn't be the sole source of your story or message.
Got it. That makes total sense. I don't know if it's Joe Rogan or he was quoting someone else. The whole, when someone asked you, how do you create, how do you make a wildly successful podcast, that everyone listens to? And the advice is, first, go get famous. Go be famous, then start a podcast. Because
that's right. Yes.
Yeah. The audience was already there. It just, now they're listening to them in that medium.
Right. Basically, how do you make $1 million in business? First, start with $1 million. Then,
they don't lose it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And that's a way to foster that audience, as opposed to getting, there'll be the new ones that join, but not nearly as much as the impact you'll have on your existing family of connections and your existing audience. That's really
exactly.
I don't think I've heard someone state that, but it's really cool to hear that, because that's like the truth. The Troublemaker's here telling the truth that, this is what it's about. And there is actually value to that as well, from your repeat buys and that kind of thing. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. It's, most content is built to get you an owned audience. And what I mean by owned is an addressable audience, one that you get to, monetize over time. Podcasting is not that. Podcasting is a very much more like social media, where it is a shared audience, and you get, a small piece of their attention for, every week or every month, et cetera, and you don't know who they are. And so what you want to do, every successful podcast I know also has an accompanying email newsletter to subscribe to.
Right. That makes sense. Do you think, sort of speculating, you know, marketing likes to go after a buzz thing, inbound, ABM, whatever the term might be, AI. Do you think the
Right.
podcast thing picks up, but then people don't realize that this isn't actually really a lead gen source as much as it's more maybe mid late funnel or even just recurring business? And so then maybe people, you think it's like a blip on the radar, or you think it's like a shift of how we get our content?
I think when we look at podcasting, it kind of doesn't matter which buyer's journey, part it's supporting.
Sure.
I think it matters more about where you're looking to add a multiplier in deepening the relationship with your audience using a podcast. So I know great podcasts that are for customers,
Mm.
existing customers that, teach them how to do cool things, or talk about cool applications. I know top of the funnel podcasts that are all about just, delivering inspiration and insight into a particular type of topic and that aligns with the brand and all of that. And I know mid funnel podcasts that are meant to teach something and engage someone to want to change, where they may want to ultimately sign up for webinars and stuff like that. So it's independent of where it sits on the buyer's journey, because it quite frankly could sit in multiple places.
Right.
But rather, what is it I'm trying to multiply? What is it that I'm actually trying to, to drive, So a perfect example of this is the difference between what we do, what Joe and I do with P&R, This Old Marketing, which is as top of the funnel as top gets, right? I
Mm.
mean, it is built. We don't, our whole goal there is not to teach anybody anything. There's no how-tos, there's no
Mm.
best practices or tips or anything like that. It is all get you excited about the idea of marketing, and specifically content in marketing, get you wound up about it, get you wanting to learn more. And where might you learn more? Well, you'll learn more at CMI's blog and blah blah
Totally.
blah, in our in our resource centers and stuff like that. So it's all about just winding everybody up around a particular set of topics, and as high as in the funnel as it get. Now,
Mm-hmm.
weekly wrap. Weekly wrap is covering the news. It's got some best practices. It's got some tips and tricks. It's going to refer you to some articles on how-tos, stuff like that. It's built for the audience of CMI, for the existing audience of CMI.
Right.
And in fact, we promote it through our subscribe newsletter. So basically, it is the support system of the weekly newsletter. Basically the weekly newsletter comes out once a week, hence the name. And
Mm-hmm.
in it comes the link to my weekly episode. So it's basically a multiplier of our weekly audience newsletter. And it's built to amplify and multiply that. So
Wow.
that's the real question I always have for anybody who wants to start a podcast is, what are you multiplying? What is it you want to amplify? What stories do you want to tell? What audience do you want to develop a deeper connection with? And why do you want to develop that deeper connection?
Right. A little, just even answering that question before doing it can help ensure you're going in the right direction.
Oh, sure.
You know,
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
because so many times we say, hey, let's launch a podcast. Why? Because it would be cool,
Mm-hmm.
because it would be awesome and it sounds fun. And then you go, okay, well, yes, it is all of those things. But it's also supposed to support some business objective we have.
Right.
Why do you want to create a podcast?
Right. Wow. This is cool, man. It's like such an honor to chat with someone who's been kind of doing the podcast thing for a while. You get us thinking about our thinking when it comes to, being intentional about anything we're doing, whether it's content creation or podcasting or marketing in general. So I guess my next question to you is like, who are you? Who take us back to, like, little Robert days. Did you always know you're going to become a sage? Did you always want to get into marketing? And
No.
you
Oh
know,
God, no. No, no. No, I started. So first of all, I'm old. Let's just establish that.
doesn't the phrase go, "How old are you"?
Yeah, I'm old.
Do you want a plus or
Um,
minus? Give us a range on that.
I mean, it'll become evident about
You
how
don't
old I
sound old
am.
from your voice.
Um,
I know the camera's not working, but you sound like and I've seen pictures of you on that stage at Content Marketing World.
oh, I look good for my age. Let me.
There it is, folks. There it is.
But I am old. No, it'll become kind of self-evident my age when I tell you the story. So basically, I moved So my hometown is Los Angeles,
Okay.
and I consider it my hometown now because I've lived here for more than 30 years.
Like actual
Um,
LA, like the traffic LA and
I have lived in
stars
actual
and
traffic LA. Yes, I've lived in
wow.
Hollywood. I've lived in West Hollywood. I've lived in the Hollywood Hills. I now live in a little place called Calabasas, which is about
Hmm.
30 miles outside the city, because I got smart and I wanted to move somewhere quiet. And so I came out to Los Angeles right. I mean, literally walked off the college graduation stage, got in my car, and drove to LA because I was going to be a rock star, and I wanted to be a musician rock star,
Mm.
and then I also wanted to write screenplays and novels, and because I did graduate with an English lit degree, so I, to some extent, I have a passion for storytelling and
Sure.
stories, and that worked out about as well as you think it might. I will, helpful safety tip in 1987, when you roll into Los Angeles and you play piano, and the most popular genres of music of the day are grunge rock and gangster rap. You're
Oh,
not going to get
jeez.
called a lot. As a white guy who plays piano, I didn't get called a lot for music. And so I ended up defaulting into writing screenplays, and did better there, did fairly well in writing. Had a play go off Broadway, and then
Oh, really?
I had a screenplay get picked up, but hated the business. I absolutely detested the business of writing, because, quite frankly, writing for a living in Hollywood, as it is anywhere, is a marketing and sales job. It is not a writing job, right? Writing is part of the pay. Writing is part of the experience. The real job of a writer is a marketing and sales job, which of course I didn't want to do. I didn't want to market and
Right.
sales myself. Um,
What was the
and
play that
and so, oh, dude, I mean, we
oh,
need a
no,
whole
I
other
bring it
set
up.
of
Well,
Beverly
yeah, well,
Food
maybe
Drunk Show
we'll
just
have
about
like
that.
another one. But yeah, I wrote a play as well, so I'm just curious. Like,
It was a
what was it
little
called?
one act play that it ran for about 3.5 weeks, almost a month, at an off Broadway theater. It's still, I'm pretty proud of it. Then in New York, as part of a one act festival that was there, and it was cool. It was a cool experience, and but I hated the business, and so I ended up getting a job in the TV world because I had created this screenplay and I needed to pay rent. And I got a job in marketing at a cable TV network, Showtime Network. You probably
Huh.
have heard of it. And to this day, I will tell you, it's my best 40-hour a week W-2 job that I've ever had. The
Wow.
people there were amazing. They were mentors, they were teachers, they basically immersed me in a marketing education that I couldn't really have gotten anywhere else. And it was just a great job. And I learned a lot. And this was, now we're talking about the mid 90s, and the internet was just starting to get its legs underneath it. And I ended up going and working in marketing in the .com business for a number of years. And I sort of found my passion. I was like,
Right.
is what I love doing, building digital content, teaching marketing people how to build content platforms. In those days, it was called big websites. And I just sort of cut my teeth working with big entertainment companies and big consulting firms, learning how to do digital marketing from, 1999 and onward.
Yeah.
And ended up then sort of as a CMO of a software company, did the typical Silicon Valley 2 rounds of funding, did the whole thing. And that's where I discovered content marketing. I
Mm.
built, a media organization because it's what I knew how to do in the business. And it worked, weirdly enough. And I built this little media. I didn't even know it was called content marketing in those days. And then in
Right.
2008, I was out on the speaking circuit and met this guy, Joe Polizzi. And he was starting this thing called the Content Marketing Institute. And the
Mm.
rest is history, as they say.
Huh. What an interesting path. The theater side, the piano side. You still play?
Not nearly as often as I should.
Yeah.
For a time, I had a great, wonderful keyboard here in my office that I'm speaking to you from today.
Yeah.
And I used to, every weekend, I would sit down and I would play and practice. And I haven't done that. And I mean, I've been busy trying to get this little company scaled up, and it's
Mhm.
taken a lot of my, but that's not an excuse. I'm woefully behind in being able to spend some time at the keyboard. Yeah,
Do
I miss it.
you think it's one of your yeah, you miss it. One of your like your underlying passions, just something that you just do.
Music generally is a passion of mine. I love music. There is not, oh, that's not true. There's one genre of music that I'm not a fan of, which is sort of death metal.
Oh
I'm
yeah. I
really, I
like
can't,
power metal though.
no, I like power metal. I like metal music. It's just the death metal stuff that
Death metal, yeah. So angry. Why so angry?
it's just, there's that. And then there's just literally, there's not a lot of melody with that.
Right.
But every other genre of music I love, from opera to rap to R&B to country to
Mhm.
classic rock and roll to blues to jazz. I love it all. I have a passion for music, and I do miss playing music for sure.
Yeah, I noticed that about theater for me. Growing up theater all the time, and then every now and then when we go with the family to see some performance for the kids to watch, I don't want to say envy, but I see the people that are on stage, and I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm happy for them. I'm like, they're doing their thing, and they're like adults, they're like professional. I'm like, oh, they're doing their thing, and
Yeah.
I feel that for them. So yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, you're on stage too. You should just play piano next time you do a
Well,
presentation.
I did at Content Marketing World one year. I
Did
actually
you?
did open the show with by playing piano,
That's
but
awesome.
you make a great point, which is what I have discovered over time, and this is also advice I give to young people whenever they ask, which is figuring out the function of what you want to do is way more important than figuring out the form and what you want to do. And what I've realized is that I actually, when I was a young kid, my main goal for my career was I wanted to perform, I wanted to write, and I wanted to teach. And and I get to do all those things now. I just do it in
Right.
a vastly different form than I ever thought I would. My main job is getting up on stage and teaching people things and writing about marketing. And so it's I'm getting to do everything I wanted to do in life. I just do it in a different form than I thought I would.
The form over the function. That's very interesting. Yeah. And that probably explains why I haven't run away to the theater just yet and still have a marketing company.
Right?
It's
Yeah,
tempting.
it's the
Uh,
figuring out what you want your perfect day to be, and how and the function of that. Like, what do you want your activities to be in your perfect day, not
right.
the form of what you want them to be in.
Right. Yeah, I did research clown school, but then yeah, that didn't line up for the schedule.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, that's and that way you're satisfying that need and that underlying desire to express yourself and do that function. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Would that be your advice? Because oftentimes what I do is this is kind of perfect timing. What I do ask is if you were to go back in a time machine and advise yourself on at the very beginning of your marketing career, what would you tell yourself?
The first thing I would do is tell myself to relax a little bit. The other thing that I would tell myself is one, invest in companies like Dell and this stupid little company called Amazon and this little stupid company called Google,
Google,
because they're going to be big.
Apple, Google,
But to
yeah,
answer your question more fulfillingly, I think the biggest advice that I would have for myself is to not get to not worry about the form of what it really is that you're doing, but to rather explore and be willing to explore the things that your gut, that your heart are telling you, right?
yeah,
One of the things that mistakes, regrets, I guess you would say I have. I mean, I have no true regrets because I wouldn't be where I am today without the path that I've taken to get here. So it's hard to look back and go, I wish I would have done things differently because I'm
sure,
kind of happy where I am. And that my very nonlinear path has led me to this place. So I'm grateful for that. I have a lot of gratitude for it. But what I would say is that my one of my regrets during the path, during my journey, has been not following my heart as often as I might have. In other words, I think it's a Jim Carrey. It goes around from time to time, his graduation thing, which is you can fail at things that you hate, too, right? In other words, he tells the story about his dad who absolutely hated his job but stayed in his job because he liked the money, but he didn't like it, et cetera, et cetera. And he was good at his job, but he didn't like it, he didn't like it, he didn't like it. And then he got to be 58 years old and they fired him. right?
Right.
And so you can, so you can get fired from things you don't like doing. And he said, so you might as well get fired from things that you love doing. And so there's a lesson to be learned there, which is we only get, this gets into a much deeper discussion,
Yes.
but, depending on your point of view, we only get one go round at this whole thing. And so make it good, make it something that you love doing.
And even if you did, why waste this time?
Right. That's right.
We don't
Even if
know,
you get to
so
go around again, don't it's not really worth wasting the time.
present. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, this is fantastic, man. Where can people connect with you? Throw some links out. We'll put them in the show notes. Do you want people to harass you on LinkedIn, Twitter? What's
Well, that's very kind.
phone number? Whatever.
Right. Yeah. So there are really two places that I would point to. One is if you want to read about content and whatever qualifies as thought leadership and what we're talking about from a business perspective, that would be contentadvisory.net.
Okay.
Or we've rolled out our fancy new domain, which is tca.inc. We got the .inc for that. So tca.inc. That will get you to the same place. And then for me, books or, speaking or anything like that, it's robertrose.net. I went with .net on both of them. Someone once said the .net is the dad genes of domains. And so I kind of like that. So I'm kind of leaning into it, the whole dad genes thing of domains.
I don't know, man. You're as old as you feel.
Right. Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those, and of course, Twitter and LinkedIn, love to connect.
Okay.
I'm there. I'm easy to find on both of those platforms.
Awesome. Then I gotta track down your play as well.
Don't Google too hard. It's really hard to find.
Is it hard to find? Are you gonna tell me what it's called, or do I have to? What's it called?
It's it's pre-internet, so you're not going to find a lot. You might find a clipping of a news thing somewhere, right? But this is all pre-internet, so it's not terribly Googleable.
Right. But you have several books. Do you want to just throw those titles out real quick?
I do. Yeah. So there's the first book was called Managing Content Marketing. That was with my pal Joe. If you want to look at that, it's managingcontentmarketing.com. We did get the .com for that one.
Nice.
The second book I wrote was called
Skinny Jeans. You got the Skinny Jean domain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The second book is called Experiences, the Seventh Era of Marketing. And I wrote that with my pal Carla Johnson. Which is a really geeky book if you're into geeking out on process and business process. And then the last book, which I also wrote with my pal Joe, was a book called Killing Marketing, which is about how businesses are transforming their marketing from a cost center to a profit center, which is an interesting trend that we've started to see. And all of that. So Killing Marketing is killingmarketing.com. So there you go.
Wow. I'm pretty sure I have that. Looking at the cover again, I'm going to have to pull that out again. Here I am. I'm talking, years later to someone that I've read your book. So, man, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on here and just sort of like opening up your brain, letting a little bit of it spill out, and just there's so much I've learned from this as well.
Well, I'm so glad for that. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been a real pleasure, a fun discussion for sure.
Absolutely. And something tells me we could geek out on theater and hiking, and maybe we'll have to schedule a time for that later on.
There you go.
For everyone out there listening, if you've learned something, and I know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes and I ran out of space, drawing in the margins, share this with someone else. Be a thought leader to one other person. And especially around the content, there's so much here. Gonna have to listen to this a couple times to digest, but definitely share this with someone else. And Robert, thanks again for being on here and just, kind of sharing your wisdom.
Absolutely a pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. And we will catch you all next time.